You found the podcast, Go Beyond the Brief, where we take a deep dive into the societal currents shaping our lives. Together, we'll explore the often unseen forces at play. We'll examine the research, dissect the data, and most importantly, if you're seeking to understand what's shaping our society, this is the place.
We're tackling something massive, the hundreds, literally hundreds, of new laws that just kicked in across Texas on September 1st, 2025. Our goal, to quickly highlight the really impactful, sometimes surprising changes. We want to cut through that sheer volume, give you the key info on education, crime, even stuff that affects your daily routine. It's not just a list. We want to get into the what and the why so you can be properly informed about how things are shifting in the Lone Star State.
It's quite something. And what's really fascinating, I think, is just the sheer breadth of it all. I mean, we're talking legislation touching almost, well, every part of life in Texas, from schools and public safety down to, rules about who can own property or even how you manage your lawn during a drought. It's a legislative session that really cast a wide net. Understanding its reach is pretty crucial.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's unpack this. How about we start with some of the big shifts in education policy? Just imagine a classroom landscape where public money might follow students to private schools, where there's a mandate for displaying the Ten Commandments, and where certain topics are, well, explicitly off the table. Texas's new laws here aren't just tweaking things. They seem to be fundamentally rethinking the purpose and structure of public schooling.
That's a good way to put it.
So first up, Senate Bill 2. This is often called the School Choice Expansion Bill. It really changes the game by setting up an education savings account program, an ESA. Basically, this lets parents use public tax dollars for things like private school tuition, homeschooling costs, other educational services outside the public system.
Right.
Now, on the surface, that sounds like more flexibility for families, right? But what's the bigger picture here when public funds start moving like this?
Yeah, that's the critical question, isn't it? The real insight with these ESAs is how they could potentially speed up a shift of public money towards private education. It's not just choice in a simple way. It kind of redefines the state's commitment to its public school system. For decades, public schools got public tax dollars. That was it. Now, by redirecting some of those funds, the whole balance between public and private education could change significantly. It could potentially lead to more of a two-tiered system, maybe impacting resources for traditional public schools, especially, in more rural areas.
Yeah, that definitely adds another layer to it. Okay, then there's Senate Bill 10. This one mandates that public schools display a copy of the Ten Commandments in every classroom. That's a pretty direct instruction for a public education space. I imagine it speaks to a certain set of values being emphasized.
Oh, absolutely. And, beyond the First Amendment debates, this will probably ignite mandating the Ten Commandments in every classroom. It subtly, but powerfully signals a state-backed push for a specific moral framework within public education. It's about setting a tone, influencing the classroom culture. It could reshape how teachers interact with students, maybe even how certain topics are introduced. It signals a clear direction.
Setting a tone, yeah. And speaking of that, Senate Bill 12 brings in a pretty significant ban. It prohibits diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI policies in K-12 schools. And just to clarify, it also restricts instruction and programs related to sexual orientation and gender identity in those schools. How does this piece fit into the bigger puzzle of these education changes?
Well, it fits very closely with the other changes we're seeing. It really emphasizes a particular vision of what public education should and maybe shouldn't address. The ban on DEI policies, for instance, proponents would say it's to keep schools focused purely on academics, avoiding what they see as social or political distractions. But critics, on the other hand, argue that these kinds of bans could really limit classroom discussions, potentially affecting how students understand different perspectives and identities. And it could change how schools support various student groups.
Right. It definitely redraws some lines about what gets discussed. And finally, in this education section, Senate Bill 13 deals with parental oversight of libraries. This law gives parents and school boards more authority over library materials. It even allows for creating advisory councils specifically to review books. This feels like a direct response to those ongoing debates about what content is appropriate for kids.
It absolutely is. This law really cements the influence of parents and local boards over school library collections. It gives them, frankly, unprecedented power to shape what students can access. Traditionally, librarians, guided by professional standards, were the main curators. This shifts a lot of that authority directly to parents and elected officials. It reflects that desire for more community control over educational resources, and setting up these advisory councils. It formalizes a review process that maybe wasn't so structured before. It could lead to more challenges, more book movals based on community views.
Okay, so when you step back and look at all these education laws together, the ESAs, Ten Commandments, DEI ban, library oversight.
Yeah, the bigger picture.
What does it tell us? How are these shifts redefining the roles you mentioned? Parents, schools, the state itself?
That's the core question, really. If we connect the dots, these laws point towards a significant shift in how the state views those roles. There's clearly a stronger emphasis on parental rights and direct oversight. There's also a move towards embedding certain values or frameworks, like with the Ten Commandments mandate, and simultaneously there's a push away from certain topics or initiatives, like DEI or discussions around gender identity. Taken together, it suggests a move towards a more parent-directed, perhaps more socially conservative model of public education, potentially at the expense of professional educator autonomy or certain inclusivity goals.
So this raises a question for you, the listener. How do these changes align with, or maybe diverge from, your own views on what public education should be?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. The impacts on students, teachers, parents, school administrators, they could be quite varied and significant.
Okay, let's shift gears now, dramatically, maybe. From classrooms to courtrooms and public safety. This is where things get really interesting, as Texas brings in a whole set of laws aimed at boosting protections and accountability.
Right, some significant changes here, too.
Let's start with Senate Bill 9 bail reform. This law brings in stricter rules, especially for repeat and violent offenders. It's aiming to tighten the system. It also gives prosecutors the power to appeal bail decisions. That sounds like a pretty big change in the judicial process itself. What does tightening the system really mean for people involved?
That's a key point. Historically, Texas's cash bail system has faced criticism, right, for potentially keeping lower-income folks locked up pre-trial just because they can't afford bail.
Mm-hmm.
This new reform, while it aims at public safety by focusing on repeat and violent offenders, it also represents a pretty clear shift of power towards prosecutors. Being able to appeal bail decisions is significant. It could mean more people are detained before trial, especially those considered high risk. And it fundamentally changes the balance in how quickly someone might regain freedom after an arrest. It's definitely a rebalancing act, weighing the presumption of innocence against public safety concerns.
A definite power shift there. Okay, next, Senate Bill 17. This one deals with real estate prohibition. It specifically stops certain governments, companies, individuals from countries like China, North Korea, Russia, Iran from owning land and property in Texas. Very targeted. Obviously touches on national security. But what's the core issue they're addressing?
The core issue is absolutely national security and also economic sovereignty. Texas is enormous resource rich.
Right.
And the idea behind this bill is to prevent foreign adversaries from buying up strategic land. Think near critical infrastructure, military bases, maybe even prime farmland. The insight here is that this law reflects a wider anxiety, both at the state and national level, about foreign influence and control over vital U.S. assets. It's an attempt to safeguard economic interests and national defense by putting limits on certain foreign investments.
Makes a strong statement for sure. Okay, moving towards protecting vulnerable people. We have House Bill 2000, known as Audrey's Law. This is a really crucial child protection law. It requires anyone convicted of child grooming to register as a sex offender. Seems like a direct response to a very serious, insidious problem.
It absolutely is, and a necessary one. Audrey's Law effectively closes a dangerous loophole. Before this, some people convicted of grooming might not have ended up on the sex offender registry. That made it harder for communities, for law enforcement to track them.
Gotcha.
This law makes sure that this specific insidious form of child predation triggers the full registration requirements. It boosts community safety, adds a vital layer of protection by making these offenders more visible and trackable.
And sticking with child protection, House Bill 166 tackles the huge concern around fentanyl. This law expands what counts as child endangerment and now includes manufacturing, possessing, or even just introducing fentanyl where a child, an elderly person, or a disabled individual is present. That really broadens the scope of endangering someone vulnerable with this stuff.
It really does. And it highlights just how serious the fentanyl crisis is. By expanding child endangerment this way, the state is recognizing the extreme deadliness, the pervasive danger of fentanyl. The insight, I think, is the acknowledgement that even the presence of fentanyl can be life-threatening for vulnerable people, not just if it's directly given to them.
Right.
It gives prosecutors a stronger tool to hold people accountable for reckless behavior involving this incredibly potent opioid. It sends a clear message: Zero tolerance for fentanyl-related harm, especially around vulnerable groups.
Okay, and one more in this crime and safety section. Senate Bill 835, known as Trey's Law. This is about protecting sexual abuse victims. The law voids non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, that would stop someone from talking about sexual abuse. That seems like a powerful move for transparency.
Oh, it's profoundly important, truly empowering for survivors. For so long, NDAs have been used, weaponized really, not just in corporate settings, but specifically in sexual abuse cases, to silence victims, protect perpetrators, and basically bury information that could lead to justice or prevent future harm. Trey's Law directly confronts that practice. It offers a powerful new avenue for transparency and accountability that was often blocked by these contracts before. It clearly prioritizes the safety and healing of survivors over the secrecy that might protect abusers or enablers.
You really can see a clear focus, can't you, on accountability and safeguarding in these new statutes.
Absolutely. What's fascinating is how these laws target very specific, serious issues from those national security concerns with land ownership you mentioned.
Right.
To direct protections for vulnerable populations, especially children, with things like Audrey's Law and the fentanyl bill. It speaks volumes about legislative priorities.
Okay, so we've covered some weighty topics: education, public safety. Now let's shift to a mix of laws that might hit closer to home, impacting your daily routine in perhaps unexpected ways. Think your car, your lawn, even personal health choices.
Yeah, the everyday stuff.
Exactly. Starting with your car, House Bill 3297 might get a cheer from a lot of non-commercial drivers. It eliminates the requirement for annual vehicle safety inspections. That's pretty big change for almost anyone who owns a car in Texas.
Oh yeah, this is one of those laws that touches nearly everyone directly. On the face of it, it makes life easier for a lot of people, saves time, saves a bit of money.
Sure.
The insight, though, is that proponents argued the safety benefits just didn't outweigh the cost and hassle anymore, especially with how reliable modern cars are. But it does raise questions, about potential long-term effects on road safety. Some argue those inspections did catch critical problems people might miss otherwise. It's a clear trade-off. Convenience versus oversight.
Interesting. Okay, and for homeowners, House Bill 517 gets into those sometimes tricky HOA rules. This law stops homeowners associations from fining residents if their lawn turns brown during a mandatory residential watering restriction. So if you're trying to save water and your lawn looks, well, less than perfect, your HOA can't ding you for it anymore. It seems like a perfect example of a state law stepping into neighborhood disputes.
It really does, and it's a fascinating example of the legislature getting into something very specific, almost hyper-local. The insight here, I think, is it reflects an understanding of Texas's environmental reality, frequent droughts, the need for water conservation.
Right.
It tries to balance the aesthetic desires that HOAs often have with the practical, ecological responsibilities of homeowners. It's basically protecting residents who are trying to do the right thing environmentally from getting hit with fines, a practical response to resource management.
Makes sense. Then there's Senate Bill 305. This expands the move over, slow down law. That crucial safety rule now also covers vehicles being used by parking citation issuers and even folks removing animal remains from the road. So more protection for workers along our roadways.
Yeah, this expansion clearly shows the state's ongoing focus on public and worker safety, especially for people whose jobs put them right next to traffic. The original move over, slow down law was mainly for police, fire, EMS. Extending it to these other often overlooked roadside workers. The insight is the legislature recognizing that a broader group faces similar dangers out there. It's about trying to build a safer driving culture that protects everyone working near moving vehicles.
Good point. And finally, in this varied section, House Bill 46 expands the state's medical marijuana program. This is a pretty big deal. It adds chronic pain, traumatic brain injury, and Crohn's disease to the list of qualifying conditions for medical marijuana. It also allows for using vapes and aerosol products. That significantly broadens access and options for patients who qualify.
This is a substantial step, absolutely, in how Texas is approaching medical cannabis access. The insight here is sort of twofold. First, adding conditions like chronic pain, TBI, Crohn's, it shows an evolving understanding, maybe acceptance, of marijuana's potential therapeutic uses for a wider range of tough conditions.
Okay.
And second, allowing vapes and aerosols. That gives patients more discrete options, often faster-acting ways to take their medicine, which can be really important for managing sudden or severe symptoms. It reflects a cautious, yes, but still undeniable expansion of the state's existing compassionate use program.
It really is striking how detailed state legislatures get, isn't it? Addressing everything from major health conditions right down to how your lawn looks.
It really is. It touches almost every corner of daily life.
So what does all this mean for you, our listener, listening in today? We've really only scratched the surface of these hundreds of new laws in Texas, but it's clear the scope is just immense. They touch nearly every aspect of life: classrooms, courtrooms, how you maintain your lawn, your personal medical choices, driving your car. These changes aren't just abstract policies on paper. They have real, tangible impacts on daily life and the long-term future for people in Texas, often in ways you might not immediately think about.
Yeah, and as you think about these hundreds of new laws, maybe consider how they reflect more than just individual issues. Think about the evolving priorities, the values within the state. What do these choices in education, safety, personal liberty, even HOA rules tell us about the direction Texas is heading? And maybe stepping back further, how might these Texas trends influence other regions or even feed into national conversations about similar policy debates? It's really a snapshot of a very dynamic legislative landscape.
Absolutely. A lot to chew on there. A great prompt for some continued reflection. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the shifting legislative world of Texas. We hope this helps you feel more informed and ready to engage